So let me just preface this that I don't know why I clicked on this, but there was a YouTube video in my feed that was all about like the breakup of Kanye and Kim Ye or whatever. They're called Kim Ye together. That's called a portmanteau. I learned that word, portmanteau. It's basically like when you put two words together. Okay, so you're learning on top of your learning today. Now, why do we even care about them? We don't. However, they're kind of like the Greek, I don't want to call them gods, okay? You're not going to like this, but they're kind of like cultural representations of like what some of the more powerful archetypes in our American narrative. Okay, so I was watching this and I'm like, why are people interested in this? Like, why? Because if you think about it, like, and this video kind of detailed some of this, but like, what's the closest thing we have to royalty? Unfortunately, we have politicians, which don't get me started, but then we have celebrities. And I think that kind of like casts a little charm on us to where we're like, we believe there's some great, great beings. Not that they're great. Okay, that's incorrect language choice. That they're almost magical. You know, like when you meet them, it'd be a magical experience. But they're just regular people like you and I. But somehow, like, the idea of them becomes sort of like this mythology. Okay, so we only see these people like Kanye. He's like kind of like a rags to riches story. He's kind of a bad boy, right? He's a rebel. He's a little crazy at times, right? But these people kind of cast a spell on us to where we're kind of inculcated into their mythology, okay? And can we see them as human beings? No, because we're too busy like looking at this idea of them. So I guess I could kind of say like, that's me too. You guys have the idea of Mrs. Stevens, but you don't really know me. You know what I've crafted as an experience, but you don't know truly me yet. So I wouldn't show a lot of people that. Okay, so think of it like that. I'm not trying to say I'm a celebrity. I'm just saying when someone knows of you, they don't know you. They know an idea of you, the mythology that you put out there, okay? So I'm not trying to say that Kimmy they're not. I'm not trying to say that they're embodying the ideals of our culture, but for some people, probably wealth and power and a perfect physique and unlimited access to whatever you want is an American dream. And like, I think it is cool that they own a lot of probably companies, that they've, especially Kim, has made success out of nothing pretty much. I mean, even though she probably is very talented and a pretty smart businesswoman. So I guess, do they embody the ideals of our culture? They start so many trends and they honestly probably do have some, like, I like the idea of diversity as an American. Yes, they embody that trait. Success, a big family, that's a beautiful idea. Like the whole like rags to riches story, yes. So do they embody? Okay, so just think of this too. Who would we be talking about if we were living back in the 1400s? You know, like, oh, what are the trends? What was Anne Boleyn wearing at dinner tonight? You know, what kind of necklace was she wearing on that neck? Who would we be talking about in the 1500s? Oh, did you see the way that Queen Elizabeth had her hair styled? Oh, so beautiful. If we were living during the French Revolution, well, before the French Revolution, we'd say, oh, what is Marie Antoinette? What kind of cakes is she baking in her oven? I heard she's got 15 ovens and her hair was styled like a giant sailboat. And even today, we have this mythology of like the House of Windsor and Princess Diana. And, there was some guy that snuck into the Queen's house, like her Buckingham Palace, okay? He snuck in and he found out, I don't know if he was like a reporter or what, or if he was just like a psycho. He reported that the Queen eats her breakfast out of some sort of like Tupperware. And so that's trending, right? The Queen's Tupperware is trending, honey. So, okay. that would be within the British myths. It's like their narrative. Okay. But we have our American narrative. And I just want to say to you like that, I think some of these celebrities fit that. And they're kind of part of our mythology. Like they embody the ideals of our culture. And we may have a little bit of escapism, focusing on them for a little while. And communities have all shared myths. And so if you want to think of these archetypes as just like our shared consciousness, you totally can. But I was just trying to add something new to the conversation so that you could apply maybe your own favorite celebrity to Greek mythology. Like, who would they be in ancient Greece? You know, what figure are they? Because all of these are archetypes. Okay, so I left off at Aphrodite lending Hera her girdle, I believe, and Hera getting a makeover. That's a very exciting part to me. Okay, here I'm going back to the reading. Please read along with me. Like, look at the pages. Otherwise, you are not getting the information that you're supposed to. Okay, once the battle turned in favor of the Greeks, Ajax hurled Hector to the ground, although before he could wound him, Aeneas lifted him up and bore him away. With Hector gone, the Greeks were able to drive the Trojans far back from the ships, and Troy might have been sacked that very day if Zeus had not awakened. Remember, Hera put him to sleep with her great beauty. That happens a lot in Odyssey too, like characters being put to sleep. But we're reading the Iliad right now. It says that he leapt and he saw that the Trojans in flight. Hector was gasping on the plain. All was clear to him, and he turned fiercely to Hera. This was her doing, he said, her crafty, crooked ways. He was half-minded to give her then and there a beating. Okay, folks, I'm not trying to say that this should be happening, but this kind of reminds me of like Bill and Hillary Clinton, you know, like Bill Clinton being Zeus and Hillary being like the Hera figure. You could totally see that. Okay, he was half-minded to give her there a beating. When it came to that kind of fighting, Hera knew she was helpless. She promptly denied that she had anything to do with the Trojans' defeat. It was all Poseidon, she said, and indeed the sea god had been helping the Greeks contrary to Zeus's orders, but only because she had begged him. However, Zeus was glad enough of an excuse not to lay hands on her. He sent her back to Olympus and summoned Iris, the rainbow messenger, to carry his command to Poseidon to withdraw from the field. Suddenly the sea god obeyed, and once more the tide of battle turned against the Greeks. Just a fun fact, too. We know that Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades are all brothers, and they drew straws or whatever it was. And, of course, Zeus got the skies, Mount Olympus. Poseidon got the ocean, right, and seahorses and earthquakes or something. And then ends up with the underworld. But the underworld is not all doom and gloom, guys. Don't just believe the movie Hercules. He's not a villain at all, but there's good places in the underworld to go as well. And then I don't know what I'm supposed to garner from this reading about Zeus laying his hands on his woman, but I do know a similar story, the Cyclops, and the Greeks would frown upon laying a savage hand on woman and child, and living outside of a community, they would not see that as an acceptable behavior. And so I think that's why Hera doesn't get hands laid on her. So it's not acceptable. Okay. Apollo had revived. I'm on 271 at the top. Apollo had revived the fainting Hector and breathed into him surpassing power. Before the two, the god and the hero, the Greeks were like a flock of frightened sheep driven by mountain lions. They fled in confusion to the ships, and the wall they had built to defend them went down like a sand wall children heap upon the shore and then scatter in their play. Right there, that's called an epic simile, guys. And for your myth, you guys will have an epic simile. And usually it's never a simile, guys. I don't know why they call it an epic simile. It should be called an epic metaphor, but like you can see how quickly that the wall was destroyed. This is a characteristic of an epic, though. The Trojans were almost near enough to set the ships on fire. The Greeks, hopeless, thought only of dying bravely. Patroclus, Achilles' beloved friend, saw the rout with horror. Not even for Achilles' sake could he stay longer away from the battle. You can keep your wrath. Wrath is anger, guys. While your countrymen go down in ruin, he cried to Achilles, I cannot. Give me your armor. If they think I am you, the Trojans may pause, and the worn-out Greeks will have breathing space. You and I are fresh. We may yet drive back the army. But if you will sit nursing your anger, at least let me have some armor. As he spoke, one of the Greek ships burst into flame. That way they can cut off the army's retreat, Achilles said. Go, take my armor, my men too, and defend the ships. I cannot go. I am a man dishonored. For my own ships, if the battle comes near them, I will fight. I will not fight for men who have disgraced me. Well, he's disgraced himself too, because he stole a woman as well. Holding a grudge for a really long time while your countrymen are being destroyed, Patroclus is right. This is an unacceptable behavior too. There's so many moral gray areas that I think that this Greek writer wants to point out and just show, like, even though you think you may be in the right at a certain point, if you're holding a grudge, that's seen as sinful as well. I'm going to pause the tape so it doesn't freeze, guys. So Patroclus put on the splendid armor of all the Trojans, all the Trojans knew and feared, and led on the Myrmidons, Achilles' men, to the battle. At the first onset of this new band of warriors, the Trojans wavered. They thought that Achilles led them on. And indeed, for a time, Patroclus fought as gloriously as that great hero himself could have done. But at last, he met Hector face to face, and his doom was sealed as surely as a boar is doomed when he faces a lion. Oh, crap. Oh, no. What is Achilles going to say? He's going to feel like he was personally responsible for this because he didn't stop him. You can't stop your friend when they've decided their course of action, right? And you can't stop fate. It says at last he met Hector face to face. So we have that comparison, that metaphor. Hector's spear gave him a mortal wound, and his soul fled from his body down to the house of Hades. Then Hector stripped his armor from him, and casting his own aside, put it on. Sorry. It seemed as though he had taken it on too, Achilles' strength, and no man of the Greeks could stand before him. Evening came that puts an end to battle. Achilles sat by his tent, waiting for Patroclus to return, but instead he saw old Nestor's son running toward him, fleet-footed Anticlus. Anticlus. I'm going with it, guys. He was weeping hot tears as he ran. Bitter tidings, he cried out. Patroclus has fallen and Hector has his armor. Grief took hold of Achilles, so black that those around him feared for his life. Down in the sea caves, his mother knew his sorrow and came up to try to comfort him. I will no longer live among men, he told her. If I do not make Hector pay with this death for Patroclus dead, then Thetis, weeping, bade him remember that he himself was fated to die straight away after Hector. So may I do, Achilles answered. I who did not help my comrade in his sore need. I will kill the destroyer of him I loved. Then I will accept death when it comes. Thetis did not attempt to hold him back. Only wait until morning, she said, and you will not go unarmed into battle. I will bring you arms fashioned by the divine armor, the god Hephaestus himself. So many cool epithets. Remember, epithets are very much like the grammar term. Why am I drawing blank? Oh, because it's the end of the day. I've been making recordings all day. The grammar term. What are they called? It starts with an A. Don't judge me. Hold on. Wait, let me pause. Appositives. Epithets are appositives. Sorry, it's the end of the day and I need more coffee. I'm almost done with this reading now. I can't leave until I'm done. So we're getting arms from the divine god Hephaestus. P.S. Hephaestus is one of my favorite gods. He's also known as Vulcan by the Romans. And many of you guys have vulcanized rubber on the bottom of your shoes. Like today I'm wearing my Timberlands and I have like this kind of like soft leather at the bottom. Well, they're leather, but then they have this soft tennis shoe bottom. That's called vulcanized rubber, named after Hephaestus. Hephaestus, there's one myth that said Hera is his mother, and she looked at him on the day that he was born, thought he was so ugly, and threw him out of Mount Olympus. Wow. Does anybody have like a crazy anti-mother like that? Like a stepmother, evil stepmother, okay? That's where that archetype came from, but It's just recognizable. And just the fact that she would look at him and throw him out of Mount Olympus is horrific. And he ends up to be like one of the only disabled gods because he fell for like a week and he got harmed because of it. But he's so cool, though. He's also married to Aphrodite, but I don't think that she holds her vows as serious as he does. Marvelous arms they were when Thetis brought them, worthy of their maker, such as no man on earth had ever borne. The Myrmidons gazed on them. Those are Achilles' men, remember? With awe and a flame of fierce joy blazed in Achilles' eyes as he put them on. Then at last he left the tent in which he had sat so long and went down to where the Greeks were gathered, a wretched company, Diomedes grievously wounded, Odysseus, Agamemnon, and many another. He felt shame before them, and he told them that he saw his own exceeding folly in allowing the loss of a mere girl to make him forget everything else. Bros, I'm so sorry I let you down and I let some girl get between us. But that was over. He was ready to lead them as before. Let them prepare at once for the battle. The chieftains applauded joyfully, but Odysseus spoke for all when he said that they must take their fill of food and wine, for fasting men made poor fighters. Okay, this is good advice. So always have a big feast, but not too big, before you go into battle, and make sure you're well rested. And it seems as though that they have some sort of agreement, like at nighttime everyone rests, so no nighttime sieges. That seems unacceptable to them. Also, if there's a funeral, there's like 9 days for the funeral process. So they do follow these war rules. The Trojans and the Greeks do. I'm going to pause just to make sure this doesn't freeze. Okay, the chieftains applauded joyfully, but Odysseus spoke for all when he said they must take their fill of wine and food. For fasting men made poor fighters. Our comrades lie dead on the field. And you call to food? Achilles answered scornfully. Down my throat shall go neither bite nor sup until my dear comrade is avenged. And to himself he said, O dearest of friends, for want of you I cannot eat, I cannot drink. When the others had satisfied their hunger, he led the attack. This was the last fight between the two great champions, as all the immortals knew. Whew, look at this tone shift, you guys. It seems accepting of Achilles' choice not to feast. It seems like it would be disrespectful to eat after Patroclus' death. Like, seems like it would be reveling, and I think that so. But definitely, this is a moment of pure fate. You can notice Hamilton's tone shift. It's very glorious. Says this was the last fight between the two great champions, as all the immortals knew. In the octagon! They also knew how it would turn out. Father Zeus hung his golden balances and set in one the lot of Hector's death, and in the other that of Achilles. Hector's lot sank down. It was appointed that he should die. Nevertheless, the victory was long in doubt. The Trojans under Hector fought as brave men fight before the walls of their home. Even the great river of Troy, which the gods called Xanthus, and men Scamander, took part and drove to town Achilles as he crossed its waters. In vain, for nothing could check him as he rushed on, slaughtering all in his path and seeking everywhere for Hector. The gods by now were fighting too, as hotly as the men, and Zeus, sitting apart in Olympus, laughed pleasantly to himself when he saw God matched against God. Athena felling Ares to the ground, Hera seizing the bow of Artemis from her shoulders and boxing her ears with it this way and that, Poseidon provoking Apollo with taunting words to strike him first. The sun god refused the challenge. He knew it was of no use now to fight for Hector. By this time the gates, the great Chaean gates of Troy, had been flung wide, for the Trojans at last were in full flight and crowding into the town. Only Hector stood immovable. Before the wall. From the gates, old Priam, his father, and his mother Hecuba cried to him to come within and save himself. But he did not heed. He was thinking, I led the Trojans. Their defeat is my fault. Then am I to spare myself? And yet, what if I were to lay down shield and spear and go tell Achilles that we will give Helen back and half of Troy's treasures with her? Useless. He would but kill me unarmed, as if I were a woman. Better to join battle with him now, even if I die. And just to say, I do think that Achilles would not accept the treasures and the woman because he did not accept it before. But also, maybe he would because he should have. I don't know. I find Hector honorable for not even asking, because sometimes when you ask, you just seem like a coward. I don't know. On came Achilles, glorious as the sun when he rises. Beside him was Athena, but Hector was alone. Apollo had left him to his fate. As the pair grew near, he turned and fled. 3 times around the wall of Troy pursued, and the pursuer ran with flying feet. It was Athena who made Hector halt. She appeared beside him in the shape of his brother, Deiphobus? Okay, well, Hector has many brothers, the most famous of which is Paris, but apparently this is his brother that he liked. And with his ally, as he thought, Hector faced Achilles. He cried out to him, "If I kill you, I will give your body back to your friends, and you do the same to me." But Achilles answered, "Madman, there are no covenants between sheep and wolves, nor between you and me." So saying, he hurled his spear. It missed its aim, but Athena brought it back. Then Hector struck with a true aim. The spear hit the center of Achilles' shield. But to what good? That armor was magical and could not be pierced. He turned quickly to Deiphobus to get his spear, but he was not there. Then Hector knew the truth. Athena had tricked him, and there was no way of escape. The gods had summoned me to death, he thought. At least I will not die without a struggle, but in some great deed of arms, which men yet to be born will tell each other. He drew his sword, his only weapon now, rushed upon his enemy, but Achilles had a spear, the one that Athena had recovered for him, before Hector could approach. Who knew well that armor taken by Hector from the dead Patroclus aimed at an opening in it near the throat and drove the spear point in. Hector fell. No! I really liked Hector. Sorry. Dying at last. I like Achilles too, though. With his last breath, he prayed, "Give back my body to my father and my mother." At this point, guys, you should honorably bury he's not his comrade in battle, but is his enemy. However, he died a glorious death, an honorable and valiant. You should bury somebody who is requested for your body to be, that's an honorable request. And I think that's why Achilles is cursed here. Achilles says, "No prayers from me to you, dog. From you to me, dog. I would that I could make myself devour raw your flesh for the evil you have brought upon me." Then Hector's soul flew forth from his body, and it was gone to Hades, bewailing his fate, leaving vigor and youth behind. I'm pausing one more time. I'm almost done. Okay. Achilles stripped the bloody armor from the corpse, while the Greeks ran up to wonder how tall he was as he lay there and how noble he was to look upon. Here's this celebrity kind of element, this kind of witchcraft that's placed upon the Greeks. Like, they all want to see Hector close up because he's so magical. The mythology of Hector probably didn't match up with like the father Hector. Even though he was pretty honorable with his family, they all want to see him up close because it's just dazzling to them. It says, Achilles' mind was on another matter. He pierced the feet of the dead man and fastened them with thongs to the back of his chariot, letting the head trail. Then he lashed his horses round and round the walls of Troy, and he dragged all that was left of glorious Hector. At last, when his fierce soul was satisfied with vengeance, he stood beside the body of Patroclus and said, "Hear me, even in the house of Hades, I've dragged Hector behind my chariot, and I will give to the dogs to devour beside your funeral pyre." Up in Olympus, there was dissension. That means like disagreement. People are not happy about this action, guys. This abuse of the dead displeased all the immortals, except for Hera, Athena, and Poseidon. Especially it displeased Zeus. Okay, everyone should be against this bad behavior. And in our culture, we should frown on bad behavior from any political party. Like, you shouldn't just be so married to one ideology so much that you can't say, "No, this action is unacceptable. No, this action is unacceptable." Behavior like this should be frowned on by Even the Greeks should have stopped Achilles, in my opinion. If when we refer to the anger iceberg in the beginning of the year, I think Achilles is just angry here. The way he treats Hector's body, he shows just anger. But what are the emotions underneath that? That's one question at the end I'm going to ask you in a journal. So Zeus is unhappy. He sent Iris to Priam in order to order him to go without fear to Achilles to redeem Hector's body, bearing a rich ransom. She was to tell him that, violent as Achilles was, he really wasn't evil, but one who would treat properly a suppliant. A suppliant meaning like somebody who would come to you and bow and kind of like grovel and say, please could I have the body back? He wouldn't treat someone badly that was a messenger. Then the aged king heaped a car with splendid treasures, the best in Troy. And I think they're talking about King Priam here, Hector's father. He wants his son's body back. He went over to the plain to the Greek camp. Hermes met him, looking like a Greek youth and offering himself as a guide to Achilles' tent. So a lot of times the gods dress up in disguise as youths or beggars and such. So accompanied the old man. I'm pausing one more time because I don't want this to freeze on the last page. The man passed the guards and came into the presence of the man who had killed and maltreated his son. These are, I would say these are probably epithets, and we know that this is King Priam coming to Achilles asking for his son back, his son's body back. He wants to bury him. He clasped his knees and kissed his hands, and as he did, so Achilles felt awe, and the others did there, looking strangely upon one another. Remember, Achilles, Priam said, your own father of like years with me, and like me wretched for want of a son. Yet I am by far more to be pitied, who have braved what no man on earth ever did before, to stretch out my hand to the slayer of my son. So he's trying to ask for his hand. Grief stirred within Achilles' heart as he listened. Gently he raised the old man. Sit by me here, he said, and let our sorrow lie quiet in our minds. Evil is all men's lots, but yet we must keep courage. Then he bade his servants wash and anoint Hector's body and cover it with a soft robe, so that Priam should not see it, frightfully mangled as it was, and be unable to keep back his wrath. He feared for his own self-control if Priam vexed him. Like he was scared that his own anger would stir up again if Priam started anything, because Priam would be mad about the shape of Hector's body is bad, guys. It said, how many days do you desire to make his funeral? He asked. For so long, I will keep the Greeks back from battle. Then Priam brought Hector home, mourned in Troy as never another. Even Helen wept. The other Trojans upbraid me, she said, but always I had comfort from you through the gentleness of your spirit and your gentle words. You only were my friend. 9 days they lamented him, and then they laid him on a lofty funeral pyre and set fire to it. When all was burned, they quenched the flame with wine and gathered the bones into a golden urn, shrouding it in soft purple. They set the urn by a hollow grave and piled great stones over it. And this was the funeral, Hector, tamer of horses, and with it the Iliad ends. We see other archetypes similar to this, like Jesus's body being, this is just like another religious story, but Jesus's body being, covered in a cloth, a shroud. We also see, in the same biblical text, you have Mary Magdalene anointing Jesus's feet from a long journey. And she even uses her hair, and she uses a very expensive perfume to anoint him and to welcome him in. And these are just honorable behaviors to honor the dead, or honor somebody who is said to be dead in the future, or to honor somebody who is a guest. So these are all correct behaviors. Okay, I am going to link the anger iceberg, and I'm going to ask you to do a journal on Canvas. I'll probably link it to the assignment, and I'll talk about it, okay? Thank you for watching.